Alright, welcome to the third and final part of my Nioh 2 level 1, no armor, no damage, no items, no yokai skills or shifting playthrough. At least as far as the main game is concerned, this is the final episode. I will likely cover the future DLCs as well. Now there is one exception to the no item restriction though, and that is the final boss, where I use Carnage Talisman to deal with his giant health bar. But pure minimalism for the other bosses. First up, Aquaman, or Hachisuka whatever, this guy. Not exactly the most exciting fight to start the video with, because my strategy is as simple as it is boring. Regardless, it is really effective. And by now you should know it's basically my favorite strategy, using the scythe to fight like a kite. After all, he has the reach advantage and hyper armor, so I simply constantly stay out of his reach and launch myself forward using the strong attack from the switch glaive in high stance. And well, that's basically it. Whenever he finishes a combo or does his grab attack, I move towards him, do a strong attack, and then I kite him across the bridge again. However, this is not as easy as it looks, because the bridge is full of obstacles, and once you reach the end, you have to get past them, because there's obviously no more space behind you. And the bridge is more narrow than the average arena. And when he's in the Dark Realm, it's harder to recognize when his combos truly end. And moreover, he can summon Kamatachi to either do whirlwinds or projectile attacks. Now the whirlwinds don't get near you when you're kiting him, but the projectiles obviously need to be blocked. So you do need to be ready for that. Now I don't challenge his burst attacks because I'm using a Feral Spirit, and since you move when you counter when using a Feral Spirit, you're simply very likely to miss when countering. So you might say, then wouldn't it have made more sense to not use a Feral Spirit for this fight? Yeah. Oh, fuck me. Daidara Bocchi or something. What a terribly designed boss. Why? Well, for a lot of reasons, but main reason is that when he moves his hands, it's an immediate hitbox. And with terrible hit detection on top of that. I'm actually using dual swords, as you can see, which are at a way too high level and therefore perfect for shitty boss fights. And specifically here for the water sword technique, to get as many hits in as possible. And high stance attacks for when it's not safe to do that technique, because it does leave you vulnerable. And because of the hitboxes on his hands, it's best to initially at least attack from in between his hands. All his laser attacks can be blocked without chip damage, and when he makes rocks rain down, keep running around until it ends, but at the very end be ready to block, because he will do one of his laser attacks at the end. And speaking of the laser attacks, another good reason to stay in the middle is because the laser attack that he does when he puts his head down will simply go over you. And that way you can preserve your ki and you are free to destroy the Amrita on the inner sides of his hands. And keep in mind that you don't have to destroy all the Amrita on each individual hand. It doesn't matter where you break it, as long as it depletes his ki. So no matter how you do that, you will get the knockdown where you can do the critical that actually does damage to his life bar. Just remember, as a main rule, always be ready to block. Whether it will be for a laser attack that can be from off camera, because of the camera, or simply when you are near his hands. After the first critical, you can immediately position yourself in front of his left hand and deplete a large section of his ki before he even has the chance to recover. And then the fight simply continues like before. However, he can also push his arm even further into the ground, and then instead of rocks falling down, there are these random large whirlpools. I can't even say I have a good strategy against that, just keep running around and get lucky. That's basically what it comes down to. After the second critical, do the water sword technique again to immediately break more Amrita. And don't worry, it automatically grows back, so it is effective even when you're standing at a place where the Amrita was already broken before. And if he goes berserk and shoots lasers all around like a machine gun, just get close to his head. All the lasers will go over you by quite a margin. However, be wary that he sometimes can also slam both of his hands together. He doesn't do that often, but just be aware that it isn't literally completely safe in between his hands, apart from the rock rain, of course. So if he gets ready to slam his hands together, move all the way back, and you can actually get some free hits in when his hands are together, because the Amrita is still exposed, of course. Alright, Shootin Doji. Pretty cool boss, but he is quite a tank. And because of the pools of fire that he spits on the ground, you don't always have enough space to work with. Especially because, even though it is tempting to try to dodge through his attacks, since they are relatively slow, I would advise against it, because the hitboxes are quite large, and doing the familiar launching yourself forward with the strong attack from the scythe strategy is, well, simply more effective. Oh, and by the way, I actually did a Yokai skill by accident, which I didn't even remember doing at the time. I only noticed it now when looking back at the footage. However, it gave me no benefit at all, as a standard attack would have been better in the first place. So given that it was simply an accident without any actual benefit, I don't feel like doing the fight over because of that. But okay, technically I did use a Yokai skill, sorry. The way I approached this fight was mainly by having the boss come to me. Especially his overhead jump attack is great to punish because it's easy to dodge, it takes a long time for him to recover, and you will likely get the opportunity to do backstab bonus damage. And he can also do a similar overhead attack without jumping. Another attack that's easy to punish is his burst attack where he breathes fire, because that has a much larger window for a counter than you would think. You don't have to wait until the fire actually reaches you. However, when you're close to him, always be ready to move away for when he does his stomping attack. I actually got lucky when I got near the edge, because he can do his spinning attack up to 4 times in a row, but in this case he only did it twice. Now you can block it, but likely that will only work for the final attack. And yet dodging is possible, but again the hitbox is very large. When he goes into Dark Realm you can get a lot of attacks in before he recovers, so make sure you attack him from behind. And here's where the fight has a peculiar mechanic. because he gets drunk and this causes him to fall down. Although this seems to be very random, because I was waiting for him to fall down, but he simply didn't. I know that breaking the Amrita in the room buffs his flask, but to what extent that determines whether he falls down or not, I'm not really sure. However, when he falls down, you can do a critical attack, but don't get greedy as he recovers by attacking while standing up. So if you don't move away before that, you will get hit. When the Dark Realm phase ends, you can get free in attacks as well, so this applies to both transitions. And the more Amrita gets broken during the fight, the more often he will transition. So for this boss it's actually a good thing when he goes into Dark Realm phase. So here I apparently accidentally pressed R2 and did a Yokai skill. Sorry, but again, it's not like it impacted the fight in any meaningful way in the first place. And as you saw, you can save the attack after he does the 4th spin with his hair. And you will know when he's going to do that move, as a circle of fire will appear around him right before he does it. Now, other than the apparent RNG aspect when waiting for him to fall over during the dark phase, is that he moves in a rather unpredictable fashion. So always be ready to block if he suddenly attacks when you are within his reach. And after he finally fell down, I actually missed the critical. Isn't that nice? And again, you need to get away from him, because he immediately attacks while standing back up. And now, it is time for one of the worst designed boss fights in all of gaming history. Lady Osaka Bay is a dumpster fire of designing buffoonery. In fact, I'm considering making a series on poorly designed boss fights, and this boss would be episode 1. So in this video I will not go massively in depth. However, the first thing you will notice is that I have the music turned off, as well as the voices. On top of that, I had headphones plugged in when I was doing this. And why the hell would I need to do that? Well, the obvious problem with this boss is getting hit from off screen with no visual cues to prevent you from getting hit. So are there sound cues? Well, they're not really cues, but there is something at least. A constant danger during this fight is when the eyeball tentacle shoots 2 lasers across the roof. And whenever you hear the boss laugh, that indicates that the laser is coming, well, sort of. Depending on where you are on the roof, it might already have hit you, because the laugh doesn't always precede the laser, it's basically simultaneously with it. Actually, it's not even consistent, so it depends on where you are on the roof. Now, fortunately, it is possible to block it, the yellow version that is. The purple version that can happen in the Dark Realm phase is completely unblockable. And also pretty much unavoidable, apart from RNG. Why? Well, because you cannot predict its trajectory with any certainty. You can guess correct, of course, but it's not something you can know, even if it's directly within sight. So the purple laser is basically when the boss presses the win button. Now when it comes to the yellow version, since you cannot see it coming most of the times, you need to keep holding block whenever you hear it approaching, in case it might hit you. After all, you cannot predict if it will. However, if the mouth tentacle does a melee attack at the same time, you don't have enough ki to block both at the same time. And if it shoots an elemental projectile, you cannot block anyway, because that does chip damage. However, the bullshit doesn't stop there, because the mouth tentacles that you are not attacking also can hit you from the back. Unless you are at the very edge of the opposite side of the roof. Well, most of the times. That's not even consistent either all the time. Moreover, the tentacle that you are attacking can push you back even when dodging. Sometimes, not always. And when you knock a tentacle down, it can obstruct your view as well. So you might not even see a projectile coming because of that. But that's still not the worst thing about this fight. And this is where the headphones and lack of music are important. Because the eye tentacle will randomly shoot slow-moving projectiles at you. And this is not telegraphed, but it does make a little bit of noise when fired. And especially if it's lightning, you can hear the crackling sound of the lightning. Like softly in the distance underneath all the other noise going on. And those are homing projectiles, so they can hit you anywhere. Oh, and the hit detection when dodging the tentacle melee attacks is also inconsistent. As I said, it can knock you back even when you successfully iframe the attack, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes rolling straight forward is enough to iframe it, but then there are suddenly moments where that doesn't count. And when the Dark Realm phase starts, 4 mouth tentacles are active at the same time. And the other one that's on the same side of the roof that you are attacking can constantly hit you with projectiles, while at any random time the purple laser can suddenly kill you. And other than getting extremely lucky, there is no way to prevent getting killed at that point. And if you think you can cheese the boss by shooting the eye in the center in order to skip the second phase, well, you can't, because it automatically goes into second phase at half health. And when you get the knockdown from depleting her ki, the eye gets automatically back up when you deplete half the health bar. So you cannot cheese the boss in that way. However, we are going to cheese within the Dark Realm phase, so we don't have to bother with the final 2 mouth tentacles. We're simply going to shoot the eye tentacle with explosive rounds at the very edge and corner of the roof. And, well, hope that the purple laser won't appear. And let me remind you that once you're out of explosive rounds, you cannot get them back. So if you fail, you have to leave this entire mission and go through it all over again. You know, this mission with all of the extra boss fights. So in the end, don't do this to yourself. Skip this boss and tell Team Ninja to go fuck themselves. Because I cannot comprehend how any human being could look at this boss and think, yeah, this is okay. Whoever was in the design team responsible for this boss, you are all a cavalcade of fuck-ups. With all due respect, of course. Alright, the rematch against Tokichiro. Initially it looks harder than this, because it seems like a bit of a clusterfuck. And he has massive hyper armor, because he is now considered a yokai instead of a human. But this time, the unblockable elemental waves are relatively easy to dodge, at least in comparison. The fight is also quite different, although there are some similarities. You will still have to watch out for the flash when he blocks your attack, indicating a parry. But you can still save yourself in the exact same way as before. Of course, we're going to use the familiar kiting strategy. And specifically, we're going to move in a circle, because side strafing is extremely important in this fight. I'm looking out for when he does a combo ending in a two-handed over attack, a single spinning attack, or when he does the flurry of elemental waves. Because those have no tracking, meaning that you can side strafe to avoid them and then close in for an attack. And you can attack multiple times, but do save some ki, because if he does a singular fast elemental wave, you cannot be close to him, and obviously you cannot be out of ki. When he goes into Dark Realm, move away and stay at a distance, because he can teleport now. However, that's exactly what you want him to do, because you can dodge or even just outrun it and then counterattack. Often you will do backstab bonus damage as well. And then stay away until he does it again. But on top of that, side strafing from a distance allows you to dodge most of his fire attacks. The only one really to watch out for is where he first shoots a single wave across the ground, which is then followed up by 4 waves in a cross pattern. Now you can iframe through it, but it's safer to dodge away from the wave into the unaffected area, rather than relying on the very strict timing that's required to roll through it. It does go very fast though, so you only have a split second to determine how to roll. After the Dark Realm phase, the fight almost continues the same as before, but now he can summon his second Guardian Spirit that creates these lightning pools on the ground. So if that happens, you will have much less space to work with. Fortunately, the arena is much larger than in the previous encounter. One final thing that he can do is a very fast dash forward, which he didn't do in the successful attempt, which might be why it was a successful attempt, because that has practically perfect tracking. So you have to dodge at the very last possible moment in order to avoid it. Which is of course easier said than done, because it's an attack at freaking light speed. However, it is indicated with a flash and a sound cue, so it's not completely impossible, fortunately. Okay then, time for the Raiden clusterfuck. Or better said, Team Ninja can go fuck themselves, and I'm going to prevent the boss from spawning 10 clones at a time by using my overpowered dual swords. However, even though this is going to be a cheese tactic, it's actually quite difficult to pull off correctly. First we need to deplete his ki while doing as much damage as possible. Now you can counterattack after he teleports and does his grab attack or downward attack, as you won't have a follow-up attack immediately after that. Or if he attacks with his staff, although he can do up to 4 slashes, and he has hyper armor, so you can only safely attack after the 4th slash if he chooses to do the full combo. Otherwise you cannot know if it's safe to counterattack. And when he does the Ice Sword burst attack, remember that it's an incredibly delayed attack, so you have to counter very late. The annoying thing is that you cannot really punish his fire attacks, and he will spam it constantly. However, it is easy to avoid by side-strafing. When his ki breaks, get right up against him and do the water sword skill. And when you're out of ki, you absolutely need to do a successful ki pulse, so you can do it again, otherwise you will likely not have enough ki to deplete his entire life bar. However, if you do it correctly, you can skip the entire 10 clone clusterfuck bullshit. Now he will still summon clones during a second phase, but at least not 10 at the same time. And because of the clones, I switched back to the switch glaive, because now there are very few opportunities to safely attack. So I need the reach advantage that launching yourself forward with the strong attack in high stance provides. For the most part, I'm just waiting for the Dark Realm phase to end and only punish the grab attack or the teleport downward attack, at least if no clone is in the way. And when it comes to his staff attack, it now changes and he can extend his combo up to 6 slashes. So I don't really feel comfortable punishing that attack anymore. And the same still applies when the Dark Realm phase ends. Other than that, the fight will then be the same as at the start. Fortunately, he has way less health now.
So you're not a morning person then?
Alright, William. Old protagonist versus the new one. William has basically two weaknesses. One is that you know his moveset. Katana and spear. He does almost nothing that you cannot do yourself. And on top of that, he takes a lot of ki damage. So my main goal is to break his ki as often as possible. And if you are aggressive enough, you might even get the burn status effect, given that my weapon is imbued with fire. However, as soon as he activates living weapon, he gets hyper armor, so it's no longer safe to just attack. Instead, wait for his ki to drop almost to zero, as it will not regenerate in this state. And then simply drain the final bit with an attack, and then do a critical. However, I unfortunately missed the opportunity, and therefore wasted the chance to do that critical. Now, William has one extremely dangerous move, and it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to avoid damage. And that's when Sarsay summons a water pool. That attack almost has an immediate hitbox, so you can only avoid damage when you roll at the exact moment that Sarsay spreads her arms. Fortunately, this attack didn't even happen in the successful attempt, but I will show you how to avoid it with some extra footage. So here you can see how to avoid that move. The problem is that it can be very difficult to see, because depending on where you are in the arena, you might see Sarsay from the side. But basically she moves her hands away from her face, so try to watch for her face. And there's also a small particle effect coming from her, but again it's very hard to see, and it definitely should have been better telegraphed. Alright, final boss. And as I said back at the start, I made an exception for the no item rule, because I did include Carnage Talisman, and a Purity Talisman, although the latter didn't make much of a difference in the end. And the reason is because this is definitely one of the hardest bosses I have, well, basically ever fought in any game. At least under these circumstances. I narrowly beat him first try in my blind playthrough, but doing it under these circumstances, without making a single mistake, is unimaginably tough. The only boss that gave me more trouble than this was the Valkyrie Queen in God of War. Now, I did get very close to beating Otakamaru without Carnage, but it was taking so much time that it was no longer worth it. So this simply helped me to deal with his giant health bar. In fact, I even included Hyper Mode, because yes, you can massively increase your damage by having less than 30% health, which is part of the Switchglaive skill tree. And in this scenario, it's easy to set up. And still, my damage output is not exactly spectacular. Unfortunately, what makes this boss so incredibly hard is, again, well, it's mostly because of bad design. During the feral phase, you need to dodge the jump attack while running and then counterattack. However, there is simply no way to tell which direction to dodge into after attacking, because this depends on how the boss is going to follow up. And, well, you're not psychic. You cannot possibly know that. So that means that sometimes you're screwed regardless of what you do. Especially because you need to dodge twice when he does the combo that ends in a dash. First to dodge the start of the combo and then again to avoid the dash. And depending on when and where the boss starts his combo, that might not even be possible. He has two burst attacks in feral form, one giant dash and the other a somersault, and the latter of which can only be countered head on and when you are already close. So that one is very risky and often fails, unfortunately. The monkey spirit attacking him in the Dark Realm phase is automatic, that's something you have no control over. And if you're lucky, it will set him on fire to do damage over time. However, it can also block your view. Same goes with the Amrita. God damn it, Team Ninja, you don't have to make everything so flashy, that's not practical. The Phantom form is a nightmare because it leaves projectiles behind that can hit you from off screen. So you need to get as far away as possible, otherwise you simply cannot block his barrage of projectiles or the wheel attack. So don't just run, because you need to let your ki regenerate. And only the burst attack where he dashes towards you can be countered. He has another one, but to my knowledge, that one cannot even be burst countered. You can counterattack the brute form either when he does a jump attack, when he does an overhead attack, but that one has an extremely unreasonably large hitbox, or if he does the full combo, so where he ends with several frantic swipes. When he becomes his true form, general rule is get behind him. For his fire sword, you can block during his AoE and double dodge the sword slash followed by fire across the floor. But that one is very hard to avoid, and one of the reasons you want to stay behind him. At any time he can do his burst attack, but I'm often too afraid to counter, since it's likely that you will get hit in the process. For his water sword, when he stabs it into the ground, strafe the ice pools and attack after the third one. Side strafing also applies to the projectiles, but it's not safe to counterattack afterwards, even when you're close to him. The lightning sword is the most dangerous one. The AoE cannot be blocked, but can be dodged, but that's so hard to do. It's best to get behind him and move outside of the hit zone altogether, if possible. In fact, during lightning phase, do everything you can to get behind him, because if he throws the lightning sword, it's over. That attack has an AoE and goes at fucking light speed, it's practically undodgeable. In his final phase, he gets a burst attack where he throws a sword around, and you need to counter as soon as he throws it directly towards you. And when he makes swords rain down from the sky, run and wait until it's completely over. Don't get greedy and try to attack even when you think no sword will get near you, because then suddenly out of nowhere you will get hit anyway. Trust me, it has happened to me before. Fucking hell, my heart was pounding when it was finally over. This took such a long time to do without taking damage. But that is it, the final boss of Nioh 2. Great game in general, but god damn it did Team Ninja massively fuck up when designing some of the bosses. And that's a real shame. I hope you enjoyed this playthrough, because it took a ridiculous amount of effort on my part to make it all the way through. And I have to say that this was definitely one of the harder playthroughs on my channel, that's for sure. And that's it. Thanks for watching. And make sure to like and subscribe. And wait, there's actually one more thing that I think is a little awkward under my specific circumstances. And that has to do with the character creation in this game. Because whatever character you create, both of your parents are in this game. And always look the same. So, this is my character. This is mom. Okay then. And this is dad. Mom, dad, child. That's, Oh, and this is Obsidian Samurai, who is also in the game. Mom, dad, child, Obsidian Samurai. That's, well, anyway, that's the end of the game. See you next time. Bye.